We are beyond grateful to welcome Phil Boyce, Senior Vice President of Salem Media Spoken Word, to the Food for the Poor studios. Phil, it is such a joy to have you here. You are a longtime passionate advocate and friend of Food for the Poor,
Yes.
and you speak so vividly about the impact of that first trip on your own life.
It did change me, and something that I never forgot. I had just taken over responsibility for WMCA, our great Christian teach and talk station in New York City. And within a week of my assignment there, somebody came into my office and said, somebody's got to go to Guatemala. And I'm like, what? And they said, yeah, somebody's got to go, and we don't have anybody to go. And if somebody doesn't go, Food for the Poor might cancel our donor campaign. And I'm like, wow, well, my head's spinning now. I looked at my calendar, and I was free on those dates. And I said, well, I got to learn how this works. I might as well go. And I was off to Guatemala in a matter of a couple of weeks, not knowing why I was there. But did know that WMCA was not doing as good a job as we wanted with donor campaigns. They were not hitting their goals, and we needed to fix that, and I was the new person in charge, so I needed to fix that. Well, what better way to do it than boots on the ground, right? So I went to Guatemala with this great organization. So I learned Spanish in a matter of just a couple of months, and pretty soon I'm able to speak it, not really fluently, but I can communicate in that language. And so little did I know that a couple of years later, I'd be in Guatemala speaking Spanish to little Guatemalan kids. And now all of a sudden, it dawned on me, this is why God told me to do that. Didn't know at the time.
Right.
So I go into a hospital that Food for the Poor was supporting. There were about 20 kids sitting on a little kids' table drawing and preparing for us to arrive. I didn't know that we were rock stars, but they did. They thought we were. And about 15 of us volunteers go into this room. And because I speak Spanish, I sat on the floor next to the table, intending to speak Spanish with these kids and see how they were doing. Well, instantly, all of the kids on the table jumped up, and about 5 of them draped themselves over my back, and a couple on my knees. And, I was showing them my iPhone, and we were communicating a little bit in Spanish, and I was loving it, and I felt a tug on my little finger. The little girl was pulling me. And so because I knew Spanish, I could understand what she was saying. She said, venga, which is come. And I said, donde, which is where. She said, venga. I said, donde. She said it a third time. And I figured, well, she's not going to give up. She hasn't let go. So I gently got the kids off my back, and I stood up. And, of course, I'm 6'5", and here's this little 3-foot-tall angel pulling me down the hallway by my little finger, took me into a room where 1-year-olds were playing. And I thought, well, that's nice. She wants me to see the 1-year-olds. No, she kept pulling me into the next room, which is where the empty cribs were for the 1-year-olds. But one crib was not empty, and she took me to that crib. And I said, ¿Quién está? Who is that?
Right.
And she said, Carmen, mi hermanita. She wanted me to meet her little sister. Now, she didn't really know me. She didn't know if I was a nice guy or a bad guy. She just knew that she'd been told we were there to help them, and she didn't want her little sister to be left out. I was blown away. But wait, it gets better. She held her arms up. I picked her up, and she started to sing, Jesus Loves the Little Children, the song that I knew as a kid. All the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight. And she sang it in Spanish, but because I knew Spanish, I understood. And, of course, the tune was right. And so I took out my iPhone and I recorded her singing. And I took that recording back to WMCA. And in a few weeks, we had our donor campaign, and that little kid went viral. And everybody loved her. How could you not? Cute as a button, and perfect for our campaign to tell the story. Now, I didn't really understand at the time, but this little girl had almost died of starvation. She'd been rescued from the mountains of Guatemala, about 2 hours outside Guatemala City, and Food for the Poor helps this hospital save these babies. They go into the woods to find families that have children, and they ask to see the children. and they check to make sure that the children are getting enough food. And that's how they found both Carmen and this little girl whose name is Tima, although I think it's Thelma, but she pronounced it Tima, and so that's what I call her. I think that's the Spanish pronunciation of Thelma. So I took her story. We went viral. We hit our goal. And by the way, that was 9 years ago. We've never missed our goal since then. So now I know why God sent me to Guatemala and put me in touch with this great organization. And I've never found Tim again. I've been back to Guatemala now a total of 5 times. I've been to Haiti 2 times, all with Food for the Poor. And every time I run into a situation that touches me like that one. But that was kind of amazing. You know, that was almost being hit by lightning. That was a voice from God who reminded me, Jesus loves these little children. Don't forget them. And it, kind of reminded me of Matthew 25:40, where Jesus said, whatsoever you do for the least of these, you do for me. Well, definitely little Timma was one of the least of these. So when we told that story on the radio in New York City, it really did light the phones up. And so, now I know why Food for the Poor exists. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what a donor campaign was. I didn't know what Guatemala was, but now I know. And so thankful for you guys.
I'm so struck by the simplicity of a simple act. Here's Timma taking you to introduce you to Carmen, her sweet little sister, thinking, if there's help, I want to share it with one. She has no idea in her sweet mind how many children have been dragged back from death because of her, because of the passion she ignited within you. I mean, it is not an overstatement to say thousands, if not tens of thousands of people have benefited from her saying, I want you to meet one more.
That's right.
I want you to see the face behind the statistics. So often with generosity, we can be overwhelmed by the need. And it's what a sweet reminder. Okay, what's your one step?
It takes it right down to the core of who we are as human beings. And are we going to take care of the least of these? Do we really care? I mean, you look, recently, you guys have been helping starving people in Ukraine, wherever the need might be. At that time, it was Guatemala, and it still is. It's also been Haiti. I've been there a couple of times now, and I've seen horrible things, but I've seen beautiful things. Right. And, it's a reminder of how we are as human beings. How we treat the least of these identifies us as human beings. Do we want to be the kind of people that take care of those that really would perhaps die if not for those donations that you guys receive and all the help and assistance that you give? So thank God for Food for the Poor.
Well, and thank God for people like you who capture the vision and run for it, because Food for the Poor is just the bridge. We're just the link between the generosity and the need. So
sometimes we don't know why God puts in front of us the opportunity he does. It's like when I decided to teach myself Spanish, I did not know that God intended for me to talk to Timma.
Aren't you so glad for that hour-long ride?
I'm so glad for that. I'm so glad for that.
You were able to connect with her.
I was able to communicate with her in a way that because if she pulled my finger and said venga, and I didn't know what venga meant, I would still be sitting there on that floor. But because I knew what she was saying come. I didn't know why. I was able to get up and come with her, and that made all the difference.
Oh, and the images we have of, as you said, you're 6'5".
Yeah.
And, these sweet little kids are just...
Well, Guatemalans are small anyway, but this one was 3.5 feet tall.
And malnourished.
And, she was coming out of that.
Right.
And they were worried about sending her back to her parents because of what had happened to her before. And they didn't want to send her back into a situation that would have a repeat. Right. So I never knew what happened to her. But I believe that if something bad were to happen to her, Food for the Poor would still be there for her.
Right.
And rescue her a second time if they had to. That's what Food for the Poor does.
We're speaking to Phil Boyce, a friend of Food for the Poor, a passionate advocate, as well as the Senior Vice President for Salem Media Spoken Word. Phil, you've spoken so passionately about the power of generosity for both the one who extends generosity as well as the recipient.
Sure.
Has there been an example in your time where you've seen what it does for those who give?
Yeah, I have multiple times, and I'm so fortunate to work for Salem, a Christian company that shares my values. And, people ask, well, why would a senior VP of a big company like Salem allow you to take 3 days a year and go to a foreign country, take time off from work? Why would they do that? Well, I think the reason that Salem encourages us to do something like that is to make sure that the donations that we're asking our listeners to give is going for the right cause. And so by boots on the ground, I witnessed what Food for the Poor does. I met the people they work with in Guatemala and Haiti, and I saw the operation they have in Haiti, which without Food for the Poor in Haiti, that country would slide off into the Atlantic. I don't think it would even exist as we know it. And we know how bad it is. Think how bad it would be without that compound. There's this, I think a 15-acre compound there in the heart of Port-au-Prince. It's got white walls and barbed wire over the top. Why? Because they've got food in there. And they know that there would be a run on that food if they didn't protect it. So they've got armed guards to protect that food and protect other things. I mean, I went into the warehouse there, and we found stacks and stacks of school desks. Why are they having stacks of school desks? Because they're building schools, and they've got the desks ready to go. As soon as they build a school, they send the desks in there. I mean, that's how desperate things are in Haiti, where they don't have schools and they don't even have desks. And at one point, they took me up onto the back wall of this compound, and I looked over and saw hundreds of rusty tin shacks. And I said, what's this? And they said, that's where these kids live. They come to this school that we've built, and they look clean, and they are clean, and they wear nice uniforms, but they go home to absolute squalor. And this is their sanctuary right here. Wow. That's what we get to provide for them, is a sanctuary from the horrible living conditions that they've been placed into. And nobody would wish anybody to be born into that country because of the poverty there that they would have to overcome. But at least if we can provide a little square block of sanctuary, we can take that school, we can educate them, we can provide uniforms for them, and give them a little bit of hope. That's all this is, and that's enough.
That's the voice of Phil Boyce, Senior Vice President of Salem Media Spoken Word, and just such a good friend of Food for the Poor, and truly the least of these, as you share their stories, as you facilitate these campaigns that are dragging hundreds and thousands of people back from the brink. Phil, such a joy to be able to hear your story. You
keep doing what you're doing.
It is our pleasure because of people like you.
Well, we need you. Thank you.
This has been a production of Food for the Poor, united in God's work.